Greetings, hunters. This is Yumo from Yumo Gaming, and welcome back to another video. And boy, oh boy, this video is definitely a hype one. Quick update before we begin. I held off on uploading my most recent planned video because I half expected something like I'm talking about in this video to happen. After my last video talked about the greatsword and longsword moves that were teased by Capcom, as soon as I uploaded it and scheduled its publishing time, Capcom released the next two weapon teasers, and they continued to do so throughout the week. Now, from my personal experience of analyzing the trailers, Capcom likes to release something, and then just as soon as you think they're done, they do something extremely hype to keep you excited. And so, when they were doing these trailers, I got suspicious, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait till they're done all these weapon trailers before I do a big video. Because they're probably going to do something extremely hype, and what do you know? They released the Iceborne story trailer. We weren't expecting anything this big until E3 when they said that they were going to talk about it next. So them releasing this now, oh man, that's so hype. And this is a trailer over on the official Monster Hunter YouTube channel. You can go check it out if you haven't already. But yeah, let's start this deep dive breakdown here. So, the first scene, as soon as the video opens up, has you, the handler, and the third fleet master on the research base's balcony talking about how there's some fair winds and luck being on your side. Going by the next scene, in which we also see the third fleet master in it, this is most likely how we're going to get to the Hoarfrost Reach via a flying research base. I mean, why not? To be fair, it does make sense once we find out more in the video, so let us move on to the next scene. So the next few shots we see, the Research Commission is setting up a new base of operations in the Hoarfrost Reach. Honestly, I was planning on making a video talking about the potential of a new hub area, but the video is kind of meaningless now that we know that we're getting one, so In one of the shots, we get to see the provisions manager actually doing her job and managing a caravan of provisions, so that's kind of cool, especially since that caravan is being pulled by popos, which is even more cool. But the bulk of this scene's importance comes from this shot of the commander congratulating the third fleet master on how fast they've been building the base. Hence the reason why I said earlier that this first scene was actually going to be us going to the Reach. It seems that the third fleet master is the one responsible for its construction. And once again, this will make even more sense later in the video. So we get a few more scenes showing off the new base, starting with his overhead shot, just showing us a scope. Then we get a shot of what I believe to be a provision stockpile, due to the stack of goods behind the man on the chair, as well as the popo, who we saw bringing in supplies earlier. So this is my guess is the provision stockpile. The next shot, we have our hunter traveling through an alley, and the two main things I want to point out is the bronze-looking contraption manned by a palico, and so, like whatever that is, it might be something new, like how to farm a certain resource or something. Who knows? But it's to the left of that, we see the tech chief by himself. Now, the tech chief is one of the three people that mans the resource center in Astera, which is where we get our bounties and our investigations. So he's probably going to play the same role here. And I like the fact that he's by himself, because they can't leave Astera with nobody in it. They have to keep Astera running. But the tech chief of those three is the one that was responsible for the construction of Astera as we know it. Sure, when the second fleet rolled in, they had more technicians and stuff, and they helped construct what the tech chief couldn't do by himself, but the main backbone of Astera was done by the tech chief. And so seeing him here in a newly constructed base, it makes perfect sense. So after we go through the alley, the next shot gives us a quick look at the smithy, and it shows us that the second fleet master is still running the smithy. This makes me wonder if who is running the smithy back in Astera, if he's here in this new base. Is it one of his two apprentices that were in the background? Who knows? Now, the next shot after that shows us the canteen with the palico doing the cooking, but it isn't the Meowscular chef, which once again makes sense. They can't leave Astera unmanned, so this looks like it's just another Palico doing it, but you know, whatever. And we finish up the shots focused on the new base with the commander talking about how they're going to find out the secrets of the Hoarfrost Reach, whether they like it or not, which is almost sounds like an order, which is obviously something that the commander does, but like he's not trying to give an order. It just sounds like an order or a threat, the way he says, like, we're going to do this whether we like it or not. So this is where the tempo of the trailer really starts to pick up, as we see our hunter and a handler flying in on the new winged drakes native to the region, only to be blown to the ground by some kind of Legiana. Now the reason why I say some kind of Legiana is that this Legiana doesn't have the light blue coloring that a normal Legiana does. Instead, it seems to be sporting either a dark blue, if not a black color palette. Now, I'm not sure if this Legiana is a subspecies or a deviant. It's definitely one or the other. It really just depends on the context of what caused this Legiana to change. Now, for those of you that are disappointed that we are not seeing an entirely new monster or a returning old monster, I honestly think that a deviant or a subspecies of Legiana makes sense considering the context of the trailer. We find out later in the trailer that the entire reason why we discovered the Hoarfrost Reach, or at the very least, the entire reason why we decided to go there, is because of a Legiana migration. So, Legiana, having a subspecies or a deviant, makes perfect sense. A juiced up fight of Legiana is perfect for Iceborne. So next, after Legiana, we get some glimpses of Velkhana coating their body in ice in preparation for a fight. And then as soon as we see that, we get this awesome gameplay shot of Velkhana breathing on the ground, only for the ground to be rapidly covered in ice that starts to shoot up. This might be Velkhana's ultimate move right here, in a similar way to how Teostra has that supernova. This might be how Velkhana has that ultimate attack. But what the idea is that Velkhana's breath causing ice to form rapidly on the ground. This makes me think that Velkhana's breath is liquid nitrogen. This might be what Capcom meant about Velkhana, although being an ice-based Elder Dragon, it's not just normal ice. Can you imagine an Elder Dragon that uses liquid nitrogen? That is insane! And this actually helps confirm a theory I've had in the back of my head. Like, it's kicking into high gear right now, because I can just imagine the implications of it. I have always intended to do a video on this, even back before I went on my little hiatus. But now, that video is definitely going to be coming out in the near future. Look forward to that. So, after the liquid nitrogen shot of Velkhana in the Hoarfrost Reach, we also get a shot of Velkhana doing a breath attack against our hunter, but this time it's a cinematic in the Elder's Recess. Which, this just makes me wonder, why? Like, I doubt Velkhana is going to die anytime soon with how active it's being in Iceborne. Like, besides us hunting it and killing it, right? So, the Recess is by no means Velkhana's natural environment. My gut tells me that this might be the first hint confirming at a fan theory that I've always bought, and that we might be getting a fully grown Xeno'jiiva fight in Iceborne. Because remember, the Xeno'jiiva we fought at the end of Monster Hunter World, that was an infant. It was just born. So, if a fully grown Xeno'jiiva is still in the Recess, and it's using its pheromones to lure in a Velkhana, that would explain why we see a Velkhana in the Elder's Recess when it's not its natural habitat, and it's probably not getting close to its death. So, like, it would make sense. Like, that's the only thing I can think of why Velkhana would be in the Elder's Recess. So after Velkhana, this trailer does not slow down in the slightest, however, because right after we get our new glimpses at our new flagship, we get our first few glimpses at an old one. Specifically, I'm talking about our good old friend Tigrex. Now, at the end of the last trailer that they had, the gameplay trailer during their spring development update, they teased a Tigrex with Tigrex's roar. Back to what I said earlier about how they always leave off something like this kind of news with something hype. Well, here we get to see Tigrex in his full glory, looking mighty beautiful in the Vale. Okay, I gotta address the elephant in the room here. Tigrex, he lives in extreme temperature environments, such as either polar regions, such as the Hoarfrost Reach, desert regions, such as the Wildspire Waste, and even some volcanic regions, such as the Elder's Recess. When we figured that we were getting Tigrex, the moment Nargacuga was announced, we figured that Tigrex would fit into one of those three environments. I don't know of anybody who expected Tigrex to be in the Rotten Vale. Like, it does not fit his environment. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Tigrex is awesome no matter where he is. It's just that the Rotten Vale is not what I expected. I was expecting, like, more creepy-esque monsters being in the Rotten Vale. Like, something like maybe if they were to add some insect monsters or something, you know, they just throw them in the Rotten Vale. But I was not expecting Tigrex here, of all places. He would have made sense in pretty much every other zone and all that. I just did not expect this. So yeah, Tigrex being in Rotten Vale completely comes out of left field. But whatever, let's go with it. This scene we get of this hunt seems to show that Tigrex is as fast-paced as he's always been, so that is fantastic. If you haven't hunted him before, be prepared for a beatdown, because he's one of those monsters that is the perfect wall for a new hunter. If there are three monsters that I think represent the three different generations of people coming over to Monster Hunter, they are Diablos, Tigrex, and Nergigante. If you're an OG Monster Hunter fan, Diablos is probably your first wall. If you're a veteran of Monster Hunter, but you're not as OG as the original OGs, then Tigrex is probably your first wall. And it's because of these reasons that these two monsters are fan favorites. Now, if you're played Monster Hunter World, and it was your first real Monster Hunter experience, like me, Nergigante was probably your first wall. And Nergigante probably beat you into the ground a lot. I'll openly admit, he did to me. But after I fought him, and fought him, and fought him, nowadays, like I said in a previous video, I can go and if I feel like I want to test my skills with a weapon, or if I want to revigorate myself because I haven't played in a while, Nergigante and Tempered Nergigante is my go-to training dummy. Like, other people use Jagras, I use Nergigante. So like that's how confident I am in fighting him now, even though he beat me into ground before. Which, just a reminder for PC players, Arch-Tempered Nergigante is coming out on this reset and all that, so just look forward to that. But yeah, so continuing on that, after the scenes of the fight against Tigrex, we get a scene of an Odogaron Tigrex turf war. Now, Tigrex seems to be winning at first, but Odogaron seems to have a decent counter before we cut away, so I think this fight is going to be a tie, which I highly appreciate, because Odogaron, he's one of my favorite monsters in the world, but he was extremely shafted when they added Deviljho into the game. Odogaron's ferociousness is such that he picked a fight with Valhazak, an Elder Dragon. Yes, he might have lost, but he is the only monster in Monster Hunter World to have a turf war with an Elder Dragon without being another Elder. The fact that he doesn't even get a turf war with Deviljho, like, I expected Deviljho to win, but Odogaron didn't even get the turf war. He just got the same treatment that, like, Tobi Kadachi or Great Jagras or Great Gyros gets. So, like, it just wasn't fair. He just gets shafted. So having a nice fight with a nice, another high-tempered monster like Odogaron, being Tigrex, having a fight like this, Odogaron's finally getting some of the love that he deserves. Anyway, moving on, we get ourselves a Tigrex roar here, and then we cut to the next scene. Now, we got ourselves a shot of a normal Legiana, not the subspecies/deviant that we saw before, flying in the ancient forest. Then we cut to the handler talking about Legiana's sudden migration and its song. Now, this migration is probably, like I said, what tips us off to something happening in the Hoarfrost Reach, which is the whole start of Iceborne, which once again is the reason why we're getting a subspecies/deviant of Legiana in the first place. Then we get a couple of lines of the handler talking about how these notes are happening right now, but don't be deceived, the footage that we are seeing in the background is not actually when the handler is saying these things. The footage we see in the background is just of us, our hunter, and the handler cutting ourselves through a crowd, only to see an Anjanath frozen solid, probably by Velkhana, which supports my idea of Velkhana being able to produce liquid nitrogen, because technically liquid nitrogen can freeze anything like that. So, you know, like that looks like somebody that's been frozen by liquid nitrogen. So that's why, like, that's another supporting evidence to my idea about what Velkhana's ice is actually caused by, which once again, my theory is kicking in high gear that I have in the back of my head. We quickly cut away to what looks like a cinematic, going by the details of its rendering, of a Tigrex fighting Rattlebond. Now, even if this wasn't a cinematic, we all know Tigrex is going to win this war. But what this scene is doing is it's going into the next big speech. So this time, the speech is not by the commander or the handler, but by the field team leader. And what the field team leader is saying is how the monsters out there are fighting tooth and nail amongst one another. And when our handler expresses an unwillingness to give up, the field team leader says, then we gotta fight, and as we ourselves are part of the new ecosystem. Now, I really like the scene for a number of reasons. One, we're getting more of the field team leader. Like, he's one of the characters that got the least amount of screen time in Monster Hunter World, so I like that we're getting more of him. But more importantly, this goes to an underlying theme that we start to see throughout this trailer. One of the underlying storylines of Iceborne that has nothing to do with the monsters is about how the old generation, the First Fleet, is passing on the torch to the newer generations. So, this is most likely a sign that, yes, the commander helped oversee the construction of the new base, but I don't think he's going to be the one to lead the research against Velkhana. I think he's going to be back in Astera. I think the person that's going to be in command of the new base, whatever it is actually going to be the field team leader. And for those of you that don't know, the field team leader is the commander's grandson, but he's also the only person in all of the research commission to have been born in the new world. So this is all he's ever known. And so I find it fitting that he gets to become the new leader, per se, of the research commission, because the commander has to retire eventually, and he's been at this for 40 years. The guy, it's getting close to that time. Like, there's very few members of the First Fleet still active. Then we get ourselves a scene with us, our hunter, the handler, and the tracker in a cave within the Hoarfrost Reach, which soft confirms we are getting some snowy caves areas to fight in. Like, if you're a veteran of the series, or you played even in just like one other game like Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate on the Switch, you would know that snowy areas tend to have caves in them. So we kind of always expected this. This soft confirms it, since this is a cinematic, so we don't actually see actual gameplay of it. But we get to see a ship, and that ship happens to bear the symbol with the Iceborne expansion on it. And the tracker, a member of the First Fleet, goes up to it, she like finds that symbol, and then she says, "Found you," while examining the ship. So this ship is obviously important. Now this ship might be a ship of the First Fleet that went missing during the Elder Crossing. If so, since that symbol is basically the symbol of Velkhana, this might be a sign that the First Fleet, the Elder Dragon that they were tracking during their Elder Crossing 40 years ago, was most likely a Velkhana. Might not be this Velkhana, but it was a Velkhana. And this goes back to that theory I have in the back of my head about Velkhana. It's kicking into high gear, because this pretty much confirms that Velkhana came from the old world. Even if you haven't seen Velkhana in the older games, Velkhana most likely came to the new world with an Elder Crossing. Like, it's probably not an Elder Dragon like Halftaroth, which is probably like was always in the new world. This most likely, Velkhana most likely just came from the old world, which really helps support my theory that I have in the back of my head. So our next scene shows a group of hunters riding some Jagras, which is super hype. Just having a more, like, a better way to traverse the environment beyond just running is awesome. Because let's face it, the wing drakes, they suck. We need a better form of transportation. So being able to ride Jagras is awesome. But if this also extends to other monsters that we can have as tail riders, such as Kestodons or Gyros, and that way we can have it in any environment. This is just really cool. I actually wonder though, like if we can ride on monsters, what monster will ride on in the Hoarfrost Reach. Like at first I thought Popo, but no, Popo are more Beast of Burden and not really good for cavalry or like chasing down monsters, so I don't see Popo being it. Plus Popos are herbivores. I doubt they would really, and they're not aggressive like Kestodons, so I doubt they would be willing to chase down a monster for us, so there's that. So we cut away to a few scenes of an area in the Reach we've seen a few times earlier in this trailer, as well as the previous trailer, and from what we've seen before, this is most likely the peak of the mountain, and it has a whole bunch of ice just like jetting out in all different locations. So this is most likely near Velkhana's nest, and that Velkhana is most likely the cause of this ice jutting out in all these different directions, because we've seen an attack in which Velkhana pretty much just covers the ground with its breath, causing this kind of effect to happen. And once again, that theory of mine is really kicking into high gear. You guys gotta really look forward to that video. I've had this theory in the back of my head for a long time, and now evidence is starting to pile up for it. I am so excited for that video. So then we get a few scenes of the handler typically getting herself in danger, this time dangling from a cliff. This is what we're used to with the handler. And then we cut away to the commander back at the new base, saying that he's going to need us before quickly moving to the recess with us and the handler. But going back to that scene with the commander, I think this is most likely at the beginning, because like I said, I think the field team leader is most likely going to be in charge. But the commander is basically just like, after we establish the base, the commander's just like, we're going to need you, our Sapphire Star, to basically lead this expedition in the field, especially if the field team leader is going to be the commander of the new base. So the field team leader won't really be in the field, so they're going to need somebody else to kind of take charge of that. So I think whereas the field team leader is taking the commander spot, we might be taking the field team leader spot in the hierarchy here, which is cool. Like before, we were just a member of the 5th Fleet. Speaking of which, who's the 5th Fleet's master? I don't think we even told that, have we? Might be our character, might not be. I just hope it's not the excitable A-lister, that would be bad. Anyway, that's off topic. So, anyway, back to the recess with us and the handler, and the handler is talking about how 40 years ago their expedition failed, the 1st Fleet, and that they left it to the next generation, which circles back to the points I've been making about how this is about, one part of the underlying story is about passing the torch between generations and all that. And as the trailer starts to wind down, we get a shot of Velkhana flying away from the ancient forest, probably near where we saw it in the last video, which is going to be near the beginning of the Iceborne expansion. But the trailer is not done yet. Oh no. Remember about how I said Capcom leaves us with stuff that's always something hype? Well, we get ourselves our next monster teaser, just like the last 2 trailers have also had monster teasers. Previous 2 being Nargacuga and then Tigrex. This teaser starts us in the Wildspire Waste, facing down a Rathian in their nest. You can tell because obviously, 1, it's a Rathian, and 2, the background, it looks very familiar to the Rathian nest in the Wildspire Waste. So we know exactly where we are. Then it goes and it shows our hunter. But then if you look behind the hunter, you see a large, giant clawed foot, and even a little small arm, brute wyvern, before the screen starts to darken, and then we get a cut, like a blade slashing across the screen. Then fire comes out of the wound, and then we hear scraping metal in the background. This, my friends, is confirmation that Glavenus is coming to Monster Hunter World. Now, Glavenus coming to Monster Hunter World is hype enough on its own. Of the Fated 4, Glavenus is my favorite. But Glavenus coming to World has 2 implications I want to talk about before we end out the video. The first is, like I just said, Glavenus is one of the Fated 4, the 4 flagship monsters of Monster Hunter Generations. You have Glavenus, Astalos, Gammas, and Mizitsune. And you cannot have one of them without the fans expecting you to put in all like the other three. You cannot have one without all four. They're intricately connected like that. So this basically soft confirms that we're getting those other three. It isn't fully confirmed. It isn't hard confirmed. They could always just put Glavenus and ignore the other three. But the fans of the series expect that if we get one, we get all four. So Capcom, they understand this, so I'm expecting the other three now. They haven't been fully confirmed, but I'm expecting them. And this is hype for another reason. Gameth and Mizutsune of the Fated Four both have skeletons we currently don't have in Monster Hunter World. Gameth, as the name suggests, is a mammoth, so it's kind of a one-off skeleton there. But Mizutsune has the Leviathan skeleton, such as what monsters like Legiacris had. You know, the skeleton that they had to scrap from the original Monster Hunter World because they couldn't get it to work right. If Mizutsune is in fact coming to Monster Hunter World, they finally fixed the Leviathan skeleton. So monsters like Legiacris are 10 times more likely to come now. Especially when we go back to the other implication that Glavenus being in Monster Hunter World has. So, if you are unaware, there's a fan theory going on right now in which they have kind of soft announced that we're getting all the previous flagships in Iceborne. Now, this theory comes from after Velkhana was announced in the spring development update, the gameplay trailer that they had there, they added Velkhana to the 15th anniversary image, which has all the flagships. So this made fans speculate, oh, maybe we're getting all the previous flagship monsters that are on this image. But there were 3 monsters that stood out as issues for this, and those monsters were Glavenus, Legiacris, and Gormagala. Glavenus, I've already discussed about the issue about it being one of the Fated Four. You can't have one without the other 3, so you have to have the other 4. But like I said, since they've announced Glavenus, we're probably getting the other ones. Legiacris, because of the skeleton issues that they're having with World, but Mizutsune, if the other Fated Four are in fact coming, Mizutsune has the same skeleton, so that issue would no longer apply to Legiacris. The third and final one being Gormagala, and this has to do with Gormagala's lore, as well as the mechanics of the fight, and the impact that would have on any ecosystem, specifically if you were to introduce a Gormagala to the new world. For those of you who don't know, Gormagala has a mechanic referred to as a Frenzy Virus, and so that Frenzy Virus basically brings monsters back to life in a way, makes them like berserk zombies before eventually dying again. But the whole virus itself, it spreads like crazy. And so this could have one of 2 likely things. The first is that this is just their way of explaining how master rank monsters are even more difficult, which I don't really appreciate them going that route. Or 2, there's going to be a subsect of maybe we get Gormagala's frenzied monsters, the monsters that are infected by the frenzy virus, and we hunt them while they're infected. Maybe that's going to be something that's even harder than master rank monsters coming into World. That would be cool. But, you know, I'm still unsure about this fan theory. It's much more likely now that Glavenus has been announced, just because of Glavenus being one of the 3 troublemakers with that theory. But I'm still on the fence about it. That being said, if we get one other flagship monster other than Zinogre, I'm going to have to say that this theory is probably confirmed. Zinogre I have high up on my list of monsters probably returning anyway. So if one of the other flagship monsters returns, but it's not Zinogre, like let's say Valstrax were to return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I would consider this theory confirmed. If they confirmed Legiacris or even Brachydios, I would consider this confirmed. But Zinogre, I think, is highly likely even without that theory. So I'm going to ignore as an ogre announcement, but if we get another flagship, I'm thinking that this fan theory is most likely confirmed, in which case you can expect pretty much every monster on that image to be coming into World. Well, that was it. Thank you all for watching the video. If you liked it, leave a thumbs up down there, and if you disliked it, leave a thumbs down. If you want to talk about the topic we discussed in this video, leave it down in the comments down below. If you have any feedback you would like to leave, you can do that as well. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let the Sapphire Star light your way. Later, hunters.